For several years, I found myself stagnant in my career despite my diligent efforts and long working hours. Regardless of the level of my commitment or additional time spent, I struggled to advance within the company. The competition was cutthroat, with seemingly constant rivals who were more outstanding, connected, or simply fortuitous than me. While not exactly unhappy, I wasn't flourishing either. I desired progress and felt competent for greater opportunities, but lacked a roadmap. My supervisor, Olivia, elicited both admiration and apprehension from colleagues. In her mid-40s, she was sharp-witted professionally, yet rather formal. She seldom discussed personal matters at work, leaving coworkers with limited knowledge of her private life. There were whispers about her personal circumstances, but no definite facts ever emerged. No signs of marriage, no desk decorations, and no casual chats about weekend plans, just a focus on work. Olivia's expectations extended to all under her supervision, making for a typical Wednesday evening when exhaustion set in. After most departed, I opted to stay behind, finishing an assignment. As I prepared to leave and head to the elevator, all I could focus on was reaching home, taking a warm shower, and perhaps having a pre-sleep beverage. Upon entering the elevator, I leaned against the wall, rubbing my temples. Moments later, Olivia walked in as the doors were closing. "David," she said, giving a slight nod. "Ms. Carter," I replied, straightening up. The elevator moved off with only us inside, causing a familiar unease due to being solo with an employer, especially one like her. I've never truly known how to interact with Olivia. She wasn't unkind, but she didn't show warmth either. She was the type of boss you admired but didn't find humor with. We remained quiet for a few seconds until the elevator suddenly halted. The lights flickered briefly before going out entirely. "What the?" I muttered softly. "Dear friends, please help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Please like and subscribe to our channel. It will motivate us to make more videos like this for you." Olivia stayed unfazed, retrieved her mobile device, and activated the flashlight. She tried several buttons on the elevator console, but nothing responded. Then she let out a sigh and hit the emergency button. A gravelly voice emanated from the speaker. "Citywide power failure detected. We're aware, but it might take some time to rectify the issue." "How long?" Olivia inquired calmly. "At least an hour, maybe more," was the response. I felt a knot tighten in my gut. The idea of being confined in a small metallic container, particularly with my superior, wasn't appealing, especially given the lack of control over the situation. Although I wasn't claustrophobic, the thought of being trapped made me uneasy. Olivia groaned once more and leaned against the wall. "Wonderful!" I let out a soft breath, attempting to remain composed. "So, what do we do now?" She eyed me and then her phone. We wait. We stood in silence for a while. The low buzz of the emergency light and occasional muffled noise from outside the elevator echoed. Time seemed stretched. I walked restlessly on my feet. "Will this cause any major issues?" I broke the silence. Olivia looked as if contemplating casual conversation. Eventually, she answered, "Probably not, but my morning meeting might need to be rescheduled." "Understood." I nodded uneasily and coughed. Another long silence ensued. "You appear anxious," she suddenly commented. I forced a laugh. "Indeed. It's not often that one gets trapped in an elevator with their boss." She raised an eyebrow without commenting. I adjusted my position. "Do you ever feel apprehensive?" For a moment, I expected her to brush off the question, but then she tilted her head slightly. Rarely. Her delivery was composed and assertive, more like stating a fact than an opinion. I responded with, "It must be convenient." She scrutinized me once more. "What makes you apprehensive?" I hesitated, feeling stalled. Spontaneously, I voiced my thoughts, only then realizing their accuracy. It wasn't merely this elevator, it encompassed my entire career and life. To my surprise, she subtly nodded, as if comprehending my sentiment. For the first moment since the elevator halted, I felt less imprisoned. The prolonged silence in the elevator deepened. I glanced at my phone again, still no signal. Olivia remained unfazed, standing with her arms crossed, patiently waiting. While I was stuck, my mind refused to settle. It wasn't solely about being trapped. We were entangled together. Eventually, I shifted position, trying to alleviate the tension. You've found yourself in this predicament before, haven't you? Her gaze met mine, a glimpse from years past. I assumed she'd let it lie, but she caught me off guard. My college days, stuck in a train car for 2 hours. Fear gripped others, but I remained composed, seeing no point in exhausting energy over the uncontrollable. I suppressed a grin. You remind me of yourself. Her eyebrow arched, yet she didn't dispute it. Leaning against the wall, I stared at the emergency light above. You don't seem prone to panic. I am not, she retorted. She tilted her head slightly. You are. I wouldn't put it that way, I murmured, despite my evident anxiety. You are anxious, she observed. So I released a breath. It wasn't every day I had a private meeting with my employer inside a malfunctioning elevator. That earned her a small smile, barely noticeable, yet it was the first hint of anything other than seriousness from her. I hesitated before speaking again. May I inquire about something? She granted a subtle nod. Why maintain such privacy? Only a few details about you are known at work. Olivia gave me a brief look before changing the subject. It's professional. Personal matters should remain private. Occasionally, we all reveal something unintentionally. She smiled subtly. And as for you, David, what does your workspace know about you? I pondered the question. Not much, seems like, I replied. Indeed, she replied, focusing her gaze on me more intently this time. You too keep your personal life hidden, so why inquire about my neck massage? You make a valid point. She sighed and leaned against the opposite wall. However, if you're genuinely curious, here's the simplest explanation. When people think they know us, they develop certain assumptions. I furrowed my brow. Assumptions, I said. She paused before speaking again. Then, for the first time, she seemed to be contemplating whether to disclose something. I've encountered individuals who assumed they could benefit from me, she confessed. That my success implied I owed them something. Maybe she hinted at being generous towards me instead. Though she didn't express it directly, I picked up on her sentiment. I gave a slow nod in response. It's disheartening, I said, instead of frustrated. She let out a small, not joyful laugh. You have no idea. I hesitated before speaking again. Are you referring to men? She shot me a stern look, but it wasn't filled with anger. Only weary amusement was present. After a brief pause, I realized Olivia was more than successful. She held significant power, and it was clear to me how such power could lead people to misjudge her. It wasn't fair, I conceded. She smirked subtly. I'm merely stating that people don't always see you for who you truly are, she said. She looked at me again, this time for a longer duration. She then nodded, which took me by surprise. Precisely, she confirmed. I too understand, I added, feeling as if I had crossed an invisible boundary. I don't mean in the same way, but I worked hard and still felt stuck in my place. You seem stuck and unable to progress, I noticed. And do you think you deserve better than this? You shrugged in response. You believe you've earned it. After a lengthy pause, she said something unexpected. I might have observed your work. You are one of the few who truly exert themselves. Yet, effort isn't always enough. The right people need to notice at the opportune moment. I scoffed, thinking it was merely luck. She admitted that sometimes it is. Sometimes, it's simply knowing how to stand out. This remark lingered with me, because that was my predicament. I did my job diligently, worked hard, but I never took steps to make myself conspicuous. Before I could voice another thought, the elevator lights flickered back on. A moment later, the motor roared, and the vehicle resumed its movement. I released a breath I hadn't realized I was retaining. Olivia checked her watch. "It appears," she stated, detaching herself from the wall. "Our unexpected meeting seems to be concluding." I nodded, still processing her words. Upon the door's opening, she stepped out first. Before I could join her, she halted and looked back at me. "Ponder on what I said, David." Then she departed, leaving me stationary, feeling as if I had just learned something crucial, something that might alter everything. The elevator incident remains etched in my memory. It wasn't merely the confinement, it was a dialogue. Olivia had never addressed me in that tone before. I wasn't sure she would speak to anyone like that at work. She was typically strict, professional, and all business. But for those 40 minutes inside the stationary elevator, she was distinct. And now, I can't stop contemplating her words. "You may find it warranted." Those words echoed in my mind for the following days, altering my usual routine somehow. I became more vocal in meetings, expressing my thoughts instead of staying silent, ensuring they were truly acknowledged. Then, on a Friday afternoon, something unforeseen transpired. As I was concluding a report, an email popped up in my inbox. The subject was simple: "Let's chat." It was from Olivia. After a brief pause, I clicked on it. "David, if you have some free time after work, please drop by my office," it read. "I'd like to discuss some things with you." Olivia, that was all. No context, no explanation, just a straightforward message. I leaned back in my chair, my thoughts whirling over every possible reason she might want to talk to me. Had I done something wrong? Was this about our elevator conversation? Or was it truly work-related? Despite my efforts to focus for the rest of the day, I found it challenging. By around 6, the office started to clear out, and I felt drained. Taking a deep breath, I made my way to Olivia's office. Her door was shut, but the light was on. I knocked twice, and she invited me in. Unlike the unapproachable boss I was accustomed to, she looked less formal without her blazer. She gestured to the chair opposite her, and I sat down. For a moment, she was silent, appraising me intently as if trying to decipher something. Then, leaning back in her seat, she began to speak. "Have you been more involved this week?" I hesitated before responding. "Yes, I think so." She nodded approvingly. "Good, that's why I asked you here." I sat up a little straighter. "All right." She sighed and tapped her fingertips on the desk. "I've been contemplating our elevator conversation, your diligence, and the challenges you face in standing out. You didn't speak, only waited. Not every chance arises, David. Sometimes you must seize them yourself." I furrowed my brow. What are your words implying? There's a project ongoing here that requires additional time and energy from you. It's not an official advancement, but if managed properly, it could set the stage for one. I widened my eyes. "Are you suggesting more tasks for me?" You half smiled coyly. "That's one viewpoint on this situation. The other possibility is that I am offering you a chance to demonstrate your abilities." After pondering, this seemed to be exactly what I had been seeking, an opportunity to excel, and at present, I have no personal commitments or hindrances preventing me from investing extra time. I inclined my head in agreement. I will accept the challenge. You appeared pleased with my response. Excellent. Then, you reached for a folder on your desk and pushed it towards me. Everything is outlined within. Spend the weekend considering it, and we'll discuss on Monday. I picked it up and began skimming through its pages. It was a large-scale project, far more complex than anything I had previously managed. Yet, it held significant potential for my career advancement. Looking back at Olivia, I said, "Thank you for this opportunity." She nodded in response. However, before I could rise, she mentioned something unexpected. "I'm also planning to grab coffee tomorrow morning. If your schedule allows, you're welcome to join." I paused momentarily. Coffee with Olivia? I wasn't certain if this was still a work-related event or an invitation to something more private. She seemed to sense my uncertainty since she added, "Feel free to decline if you're busy." I shook my head vigorously. "No, I am free," she returned a small smile. "Understood then." "At the cafe opposite our office, 10 in the morning." I nodded and stood up. "I will be there." As I left her office, my mind was abuzz. It wasn't merely about work anymore. This was unlike anything before, and for the first time in a while, I was unsure of our direction. That night, sleep eluded me. The coffee invite was about more than just drinks. It held an unidentifiable essence. Olivia had never extended such an invitation outside work, and her casual, pressure-free approach added to its significance. On Saturday morning at the cafe, I was a blend of eager and apprehensive. Upon seeing Olivia at a corner table in a black sweater instead of her usual work attire, I recognized her immediately. She looked at ease, less like an authority figure, more human. As I approached, she acknowledged me with a subtle nod. "You're punctual." I returned the smirk. "I thought arriving late might not leave a favorable impression." She laughed and gestured to the seat opposite hers. "Have a seat." I obliged. Momentarily, we shared a peaceful quiet as we sipped our coffee. Unusual was the feeling of equal footing compared to our workplace dynamics, where there was always a clear hierarchy. "I appreciate your visit," she eventually said, setting down her cup. I naturally responded. Admittedly, the invitation took me by surprise. She studied me for a moment. "You're diligent, David," I acknowledged. "Indeed, I can see that. But you seem to be in a rut?" I slowly nodded. "Yes, perhaps I am." She sighed and gazed out the window. "I understand that feeling more than you might think." I winced slightly. "You?" She faced me again. "Perhaps you imagine my journey has been easy, but I ascended the ranks effortlessly," I shrugged. "After all, you're in charge," she chuckled gently. "I am, but it wasn't effortless. It took years to reach this position, and even after, the struggle persisted." I leaned forward slightly. "What did you mean by that?" She paused before sipping her coffee. "People perceive me as authority, power. They think I'm self-sufficient and independent." I acknowledged with a nod. That was exactly what drew my attention to her at work. However, the truth is, she breathes, it's lonely. No one truly sees me, David, not the person beneath the title. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. It was unusual to hear such honesty from you. This side of Olivia I had never imagined existed. She looked at me again. "That's why I opened up to you in the elevator. You seemed different." "How are they different?" She tilted her head, as if truly listening. As if regarding me not as a superior, but as an individual. Swallowing hard, I realized I had never seen you any other way until that moment. "But once you let down your guard, things changed." She nodded slowly. "That's why I wanted to have this conversation. I don't do this often, David. Allowing people in." She paused before saying, "I find myself opening up to you." Her words caused my heart to tighten. I glanced at my coffee. I'm aware, she hinted. She raised an eyebrow quizzically. Are you? I nodded in affirmation. Not to the same extent, but I comprehend what it means to be unseen, to put forth effort and still feel unacknowledged. She scrutinized me. Your previous partner, I stiffened slightly. Yes, you mentioned in the elevator that she was unfaithful. I exhaled softly. Yes, I believed we were developing something genuine. I discovered I was just a choice. Olivia's facial expression softened. I expressed regret. I shrugged nonchalantly. It happened a while back. Time doesn't lessen the pain. I was struck by her sincerity. There was no criticism, no mockery, just understanding. For a brief moment, we were silent, but the quietness felt secure. She sipped her coffee and smirked slightly, concerning the project. I chuckled softly. It seems we're back to business so soon? She cocked her head. Did you think this was a date? I felt my cheeks flush a bit. I get it. I was just... She laughed lightly. Take it easy, David. I was just teasing you. I sighed and shook my head. You can be infuriating. She smiled and leaned slightly towards me, although for the record, I appreciated it. We maintained eye contact. Yes, I agree, she nodded. Good. After a brief pause, she suggested, maybe we should repeat this sometime. I hesitated and then nodded. Yes, I enjoy it. She seemed pleased with her response, and since my employment at the company began, I finally comprehended that Olivia was not just my supervisor. She was something more. I wasn't sure what that meant yet, but I was open to discovering it. It had been a few months since our coffee encounter with Olivia. The dynamics at work have changed, albeit subtly. I continued my work diligently, consistently arriving on schedule. My dedication remained unchanged, yet Olivia seemed to take notice. She started inviting me to more meetings and delegating larger tasks, even seeking my input on matters she hadn't addressed earlier. The promotion wasn't the only change. Our relationship was evolving as well. We began to share more casual interactions, progressing from coffee meetups to dinners. One evening, she invited me to her apartment, marking a significant shift in our dynamic. I remember standing at her doorstep, feeling unsure and aware of an unsettling difference about her. It wasn't just nervousness, it was the realization that she was unique. Olivia opened the door, dressed comfortably in pants and a sweatshirt. Her usual brisk demeanor seemed to have mellowed. "You're here," she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. Her apartment was stylish yet homely. In a room filled with sleek furnishings and intimate decorations, the atmosphere felt invitingly homely. Her dwelling, previously unknown to me, seemed fitting. She offered us each a glass of wine as we settled into her lounge, conversation flowing naturally as usual. However, this encounter carried an undercurrent of weightiness, as if we were both subconsciously acknowledging unspoken matters. Then she fixed her gaze on me. "David," she said, in a tone that caused my heart to constrict. "Do you have regrets?" I furrowed my brow. "Which regrets are you referring to?" She took a sip of her wine, contemplating before responding. "Us, whatever it is." I leaned closer. "We haven't clarified what exactly this it is." She chuckled softly, though her laughter held an edge of apprehension, something unexpected for her. She admitted my question, but maintained that we both sensed there was something. I set down my glass. "Do you harbor regrets?" She remained silent for a moment before meeting my eyes as if considering whether to trust me with the answer. Eventually, she shook her head. "No, I don't." I let out a breath unknowingly held. "I'm glad you feel the same." Her shoulders eased upon hearing that. "You may not realize it, But we're not just manager and employee anymore, are we? I interjected softly. She fell silent for a bit. Then she gently traced her fingers over mine. The gesture was subtle, barely a contact, yet enough to assure me that whatever this was between us was genuine. Following that fateful night, we maintained a professional demeanor at work, preserving discretion. However, outside of work, we found ourselves in each other's company. It wasn't an impulsive, passionate romance. It was measured and steady. There were stolen glances and hushed conversations, late dinners and early morning messages. After years of isolation, Olivia began to open up to someone, and it struck me then that I yearned for authenticity once more since my ex. A year passed, and I found myself in her apartment, observing her make coffee in the kitchen. Suddenly, it hit me. This was now my existence. I attained the job I aspired for. I earned the admiration I pursued, and she was mine. It never occurred to me that being stuck in an elevator could reshape my destiny. Yet, at times, seemingly trivial events hold immense significance.